This teaching is part 2 of a series that I'm doing on how Jesus cast vision when he called his first disciples and what we can do to imitate Jesus when it's time for us to cast vision to those God has placed under our care. Let's get started. Welcome to Equipped. I'm Mario Escobedo. On this channel, I do Bible study videos and other types of videos as well. But no matter what kind of video it is, it's all with the intention of providing you with tips and tools to share the Bible more effectively with those God has placed under your care. If that sounds interesting and or helpful to you, then consider subscribing and also tap the notification bell so that you're always up to date on the latest teachings. This is the second video in a series that I'm doing on when Jesus called his disciples in Matthew chapter 4, verses 18 to 20. And I'm saying that in that passage, Jesus cast vision to his disciples so effectively that they immediately left their nets to follow him. Now, in the previous video, I talked about what I consider vision to be. It's painting a picture of a future that's better than what is the current reality. And as pastors and church leaders, one of our biggest responsibilities is to cast vision to our people. We cast vision for them as individuals, but we also cast vision for our church as a whole. Where does God want us to be? And without a doubt, wherever God wants us to be is better than where we currently are. And so what I'm suggesting to you is that casting vision is a major responsibility that we have as pastors and church leaders. And not only that, but your weekly sermon or your teaching opportunity is one of the most powerful tools at your disposal for casting vision to your people. So use those tools wisely and effectively. I'm looking in this series only at Matthew chapter 4, verses 18 through 20. And really, I'm focusing on one phrase in that pericope. So let's look at the screen. And here's Matthew chapter 4, verses 18 through 20. Let me read it just to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all familiar with what we're talking about. Now, this is talking about Jesus and when he called his first disciples. While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. What I'm suggesting, and what I suggested in the previous video, if you haven't seen it, check the link for the description to that first video, is that here in that one phrase in verse 19, Jesus cast vision to his disciples, and he did it so effectively that we see the result in verse 20. Immediately they left their nets and followed him. Now, this is the only phrase. This is all Jesus said, as far as we know, when he called his first disciples, or Peter and Andrew in this case. All he said was, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." But what I'm suggesting is that Jesus cast vision with that one statement. And so I'm extrapolating some principles of vision casting for us as pastors and church leaders. Now, what do I see that Jesus did here in this phrase to cast vision? Something very important. And this is the second principle in this series. This is important. So look at this. Jesus talked about what they would become, not about what they would have to do. And this is so important when it comes to casting vision. Talking about what they could or they would become, talking about the disciples here, not about what they would have to do. I want you to notice what Jesus did in this passage. He said, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men." He's talking about what they could become if they follow him. Notice, at least what we have recorded here in Matthew, Jesus did not approach them and say, "Hey, follow me, be my disciples, and I want you to pray 3 hours a day. I want you to read 3 chapters from the Tanakh every single day and memorize at least 2 of those chapters. I want you to fast, and not one of these Daniel fasts. I mean, it's a true fast, water only, at least 3 times a week, and then once a month, an entire week. And then I want you to do this, and then I want you to do this. Oh, and by the way, you're going to have to do this, and you need to stop doing this, and you can't do this anymore, but you better do this." Jesus didn't talk about all the things that they were going to have to do when he called his disciples. And this is important. This is very important. I'll go back to the screen. He talked about what they would become, not about all the things that they were going to have to do. Now, don't get me wrong, because in the course of his time with them, as Jesus was discipling them, of course, there was a bunch of things they would have to do, and he would lay out those things to them. But at that moment when he called them, it wasn't the time to talk about everything they were going to have to do. It was time to emphasize what they could become. That was key. Jesus was casting vision. Look at what you're going to become. Didn't talk about what they were going to have to do. It's all about what they would become. And that phrase right there, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men, is so key, so important to that, because Jesus is casting vision for what they could become. It's not time to talk about what they would have to do. So how do we translate to us now in our roles as pastors and church leaders? I see it very simple. It's just for me, it's a one-to-one correspondence. Here's what I see. When we talk to people, we talk to them and we talk more about what they can become than what they will have to do. And unfortunately, I think this is something that we've probably gotten wrong as pastors and church leaders. When people come to our church and they get saved, we immediately start piling on all the things they're going to have to do. Well, you have to do, and you have to come on Wednesday, and you have to come to our discipleship, and you have to come to Sunday morning and Sunday night, and we have prayer on Tuesday, and you have to, and you better stop wearing pants, and you better not wear as much makeup, and you can't go to the movies anymore, and you need to throw out your secular CDs because that's from Satan. And we start piling on all these things they have to do. And I'm going to tell you this because I've seen this happen. When you focus your attention and you talk more about what you have to do, that's overwhelming. It overwhelms the new believer. It overwhelms the new Christian, or anybody who just wants to pursue a more godly lifestyle and they want to pursue discipleship. When you focus more attention, when you talk more about what they have to do, it's overwhelming. Because I picture it like this in my mind. Okay, you have to do this. Oh, okay. And then you have to do this. Oh, man, okay, that's a little bit more. And then you have to do this and this and this. And it just gets heavier and heavier and heavier and more overwhelming every time you pile on something more you have to do. Jesus didn't do that. It wasn't the moment to do that. He talked about what they could become. I'm going to make you fishers of men. He focused on what they could become, not on what they would have to do. So when you focus on what they have to do, it's overwhelming. But when you focus on what they can become, it's inspiring. And this is our role as pastors and church leaders, that we paint this picture of a vision of what they can become, and we inspire them. Look, if you devote your life to being a disciple of Jesus, here's what you can become. Here's what your marriage can become. Here's what your spiritual life can become. Here's what your work environment can become. Here's what your family environment can become. Here's what your parenting can become. We present that vision to them in that moment when they come to us hurting and they have needs and real necessities. We don't pile on all the things they're going to have to do. We're going to have to lead them in that direction eventually. But in that moment, we follow the example of Jesus and we cast a vision for what they can become. I think that's a far more effective way of bringing people along in the journey of what they can become, not piling on everything they have to do. Because again, I'll tell you, I've seen this happen. I've made this mistake with people that I've talked more about, well, here's what you should do, instead of here's what you can become. And here's what I've noticed, okay? And I'll reiterate this. When you focus more attention on what they have to do, it's overwhelming. Because what happens is that when they start lining up all the things that you've told them they have to do, it becomes very difficult to see what they can become. Because all the stuff they have to do has gotten in the way and they can't see what they can become. It becomes overwhelming and it's like, I can't do all these things. This is too much. Because we've reversed the process. Let's start with what they can become and just really paint this vision of what they can become. And then when it's time, then we say, hey, remember what we talked about, what you can become? Remember that vision I painted of what your marriage, your life, your finances can become? Well, let's talk about now what you're going to have to do to achieve that. And you start laying out, after you've laid a vision for them of what they can become, then you can start talking about what they have to do. And I think if we as pastors and church leaders, if we do a good enough job of presenting a vision to them of what they can become, when it comes time to talk about what they have to do, then they'll say, wait a minute, I've seen what I can become. And you're telling me that all I have to do is this and I can become that? Yeah. All of a sudden, when you present a vision of what they can become, what they have to do doesn't seem as overwhelming and it becomes worth it. Doesn't mean that it's easy. We don't want to deceive them and say, hey, this is what you can become. It's going to be a piece of cake. No, we present the truth to them. But if we do a good enough job of presenting a compelling vision of what they can become, then when they see what they have to do, even if it's something difficult that they're going to have to just sacrifice and do everything they have to do, they'll say, okay, but I'm going to do it because I've seen what I can become. And it's worth it. I'll do it. That responsibility, it lies on us as pastors and church leaders to paint a vision of what they can become before we talk about everything they're going to have to do to get there. Because what we want to do is we want to inspire people to reach the vision that they can attain in Jesus. It's not because of us. It's not because of our church. It's because we know that Jesus transforms lives. I mean, that's what it is. And that when we devote ourselves to being fully devoted followers of Jesus, disciples of Jesus, we know that the outcome is so much better than the current reality. So we present that to our people. And I'll tell you again, your weekly sermon is such a powerful tool for presenting people what they can become more so than what they have to do. Because what we tend to do, and I've done this too many times, in our weekly sermons, we want to get people to do. Hey, come to this, and don't forget to come to that. And we lead with that. Now, we have to say those things. I get it. We have to say those things. But there's a difference in mentioning those things, and there's a difference in leading with those things. What I want you to lead with is vision. Hey, in our discipleship class, here, we want to talk to you about what you can become in Jesus. We're going to give you the tools to become what you have to, what God wants you to be, what you can become. And all you have to do is show up on Thursday night, or all you have to do is show up to your life group. See, lead with what you can become. You'll have to talk about what they have to do, but lead the conversation with what they can become. And do that in your messages, because again, your weekly sermon is one of, if not the most powerful tool for casting vision for individuals and for your church as a whole, because you'll have to do this for your church as well. You want to present a vision to your church of, here's what I feel God wants us to become. Lead with that instead of, oh, you know what? We're going to have to do a lot of things. We're going to have to make a lot of changes. There's a lot to do. If you lead with that, man, people are going to back off. But you lead with, here's what we can become. Because I'll just throw this in there. This is a bonus, all right? When we recruit people to ministries or to volunteer in our ministries, man, please, let's train our people correctly. Because I've seen this happen. If they approach a potential volunteer and they say, hey, do you want to be part of kids ministry? Oh, yeah. And the person who's doing the recruiting, they lead the conversation with everything that has to be done. Okay, well, look, you have to be here an hour before service because we got chairs to set up and we got to bring out some of the toys for the kids. And then you're going to have to stay after service a little bit because, man, those kids, man, they make such a mess. They make a mess. And so we have to stay afterwards to clean up. And, there's a broom. There's only one broom, and the bristles are all messed up. Pastor doesn't want to buy another broom. He's so cheap. And then you also, oh, yeah, we have trainings every Tuesday, so you're going to have to come to the trainings. And so they lead with all the things that have to be done, and people are like, yeah, you know what? I don't want to sign up for that. Because when you lead with what you have to do, it's overwhelming. But what if you lead with what that person can become in kids ministry? I think you can become a great group leader. I think you can become an influential voice in the lives of these kids. There's this one little boy who comes to mind, single parent home, a single mom at home. He doesn't have that father figure at home, but man, I bet you can become that godly father figure to him if you're in kids ministry. Lead with what they can become. You can become an influential voice to our youth, to our young adults, to our kids. And then you present that vision, then you can come back to, okay, now for that to happen, let me tell you some of the things that you're going to have to do. And I've seen it work, that when we lead with what people can become, they're a lot more willing to take steps of what they have to do because they've seen the vision. So again, the whole emphasis here is leading conversations, talking more about what people can become than what they will have to do. And I'll reiterate this because I believe this to the core of who I am, that your weekly sermon is one of, if not the most powerful tool for casting vision. And in fact, I've got a free resource for you I want to share with you. I've titled it Making the Most of Your Sermon Prep Time. And the subtitle is the 3 most strategic questions you must answer to prepare effective, engaging, life-transforming sermons. And This teaching, completely free by the way, this teaching will help you, guide you in crafting sermons that will help you cast vision for individuals and for your church as well. Hey, there's still some videos left in this series, so don't tune out too quickly. There are some more coming. Be sure to like this video, comment. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe, share this, do all those things that people ask you to do on YouTube. I'd appreciate you doing that as well. And until next time, God bless.